What is going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And lo and behold, One Piece Day is not that far away, so it's going to be in about 4 or 5 days from now, where they're going to do the official stream, and we learn a lot of new things about, just relating to all adjacent things One Piece throughout the next year or so. Maybe we get some information about a new upcoming film. That would be really cool. Usually Oda gives us some information about what we can expect in the next year of the manga, and a lot of the games get updates and news informational posts, which Treasure Cruise will be getting something like that. Now, over the last handful of years, Treasure Cruise has been celebrating One Piece Day by introducing a new character or a new event to kind of coincide with One Piece Day, as it is a relatively big celebration in the grand scheme of things. So what we're doing today is we're going back, having a look at all of the previous One Piece Day celebratory characters, and then hopefully we can kind of get a glimpse as to what we can expect moving forward into this year's One Piece Day celebration, alright? I've been saying over the last month or so that, save your gems for One Piece Day because, we might have something big for it. However, with the information that we've received recently, it does look like One Piece Day is going to be a bit more toned down, a bit more low-key compared to the previous year's One Piece Day celebration, okay? So let's go ahead and get into things here as we jump into the first character, which is Wano Law. So he was the first character to debut for a One Piece Day celebration in Treasure Cruise, and this was basically a simultaneous release. Not really, but it kind of was in a way. So Wano Law was a pretty cool release, honestly, because when this guy came out, he was just one of the best legends in the game. He just synergized so well with a lot of characters in the game. He had a great special providing lots of power, orb boost, chain boundary. He was one of the first chain boundary units in the game, as well as also introducing great orb changing mechanics. And of course, Law gets access to the Corazon support, which is another good reason why a lot of people would use this guy. Also, when he came out, his captain ability was actually pretty good, because if you were able to achieve a 4.5 times damage boost, that was really good. Like at this time period, this was where Shanks' crew was like the best character in the game, and Shanks' crew in his dual form, I believe, was a 4.5 times captain. So obviously there is the drawback of having to be at full HP, and he does only boost 3 classes, but still, what this guy was capable of doing, especially because back in the day, having a defensively focused captain effect wasn't necessarily a drawback as it is these days. Having a more offensive ability with really cool utility pieces is kind of like the best captain abilities that we see in today's day and age. But having a captain ability that would be solid damage, really good healing, and damage reduction, like, you couldn't really ask for much more than this back when he first came out. He was just a phenomenal character release. So after 2020, we move into 2021, and that's where we got, on the Japanese side of things, this was the One Piece Day character for that celebration, being the Sai Straw Hats. A lot of people actually liked this character when they first debuted, but obviously the major drawback with this unit is that it counts itself as a Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Nami, Robin, Chopper, Usopp, Frankie, Brook, and Jinbei all on your team, meaning that obviously if you run this character, you can't run any other versions of any of the other Straw Hats. One thing that we could potentially see during this celebration for One Piece Day 2025 is a potential super evolution for a character such as this. And again, look, we just talked about the major drawback of this character, but a super evolution for a character such as this would actually be pretty awesome. Would love to see that. Is that going to happen? Pretty unlikely, I would guess, but still, it would be cool to see it. The big thing about this unit, and why everyone liked this unit in regards to what it does, is the special basically does a ton of different abilities. It's like basically taking a lot of different components of other Straw Hat specials and kind of molding it into this one unit. Makes slots beneficial, gives you an attack boost, gives you a color affinity boost, delays, you can remove any one debuff by 5 turns, damage reduction, orb change, healing, and then removing enemies' rainbow shield and blue shield. Pretty good special ability, does a lot of different things. But of course, as we mentioned, major drawback with the unit, which really didn't help. This character saw some niche usage in Rumble when they first came out, but of course, the major drawback of the unit definitely held this character back a lot. But because this character did count as every Straw Hat, you got access to a ton of good supports that you could attach to this unit. A little bit of a drawback though is this: the character is not a damage dealing special, which definitely sucks because you can't put some very specific supports on them. But overall, pretty interesting character that came out in 2021. Moving on into 2022, we had the Summertime Zora and Sanji. This character definitely didn't see a lot of play. This character came out. It was kind of cool, I guess. The artwork is kind of neat, but the only real reason why this character basically saw any play was because there was a Clash Jinbei that also debuted alongside this. That free-to-play Clash Jinbei actually sees a decent amount of play whenever it's boosted on a treasure map or an event or whatever. It typically will be used in some way or shape or form because that free-to-play Jinbei has a great utility special. Unfortunately, the Zora and Sanji really hasn't seen much play. So being a Dex and Psy focused character, the captain ability just doesn't have a lot going for it. The special ability is mainly focusing on giving a major color affinity boost to Dex and Psy characters. It does have the ability to inflict increased damage taken to the enemy, but it doesn't go through full immunity, so that's the major drawback there. And then the super special does have some cooldown, some chain multiplicative, but again, nothing too crazy. And the support effect on paper seems interesting, but yet again, it doesn't have the ability to go through immunity, and it only really works when you're inflicted with increased damage taken on your side of the field, which is extremely niche, doesn't happen very often at all. And a lot of the times when you are inflicted with this debuff, the enemy just has debuff immunity anyway, which negates the usefulness of the support in general. So yeah, this character was definitely one of the most underwhelming One Piece Day related events, so this one was a major L. We move on to the next celebration the year after in 2023, I believe this is now, and yeah, this one was also a bit of an L. So this also, I believe, debuted with a Clash. I think it was Clash Bonnie, and this character, obviously with the rare recruit Viola, if you use those two characters together, it made the Clash extremely easy. But this character is, again, another one of those units that was basically only really good for that one Clash and hasn't really seen any play after the fact. Just because this character is locked behind like getting additional abilities like by having a rainbow slot, but this character can only really generate a rainbow slot if they're the captain, but their captain ability is really bad, so there's no real reason to kind of use this character. And if you're not using them as a captain, generating the rainbow slot via this makes the special work as intended. So yeah, this character isn't really all that. This is not a good unit at all. However, the interesting thing about 2023, they had the One Piece Day celebration, which was this banner right here. When they had the official live stream, they actually teased that there was going to be another Super Sugo Fest that would be coming the week after, or the 2 weeks after this banner dropped, and that ended up being the release of Psy Gear 5 Luffy coinciding with his anime debut. And this was a massive release. I think this is arguably one of the biggest banners that Treasure Cruise has ever dropped. I think this is top 5 easily in terms of the amount of revenue that it generated for the game. So this was a big monumental release, and this does kind of technically count as a One Piece Day celebration because like this actually debuted the first week of August in 2023. So I guess you can kind of say, yeah, that it is, a One Piece Day celebratory unit, even though technically it's not. This was the One Piece Day celebratory unit for that year. But either way, like, it was a pretty bad celebration with the Shirahoshi, but then they kind of made up for it with this massive release of Gear 5 Luffy. We move on to the year after that, and that is when they released the Luffy versus Kaido unit. So the One Piece, there wasn't actually anything for the One Piece Day in July. They actually waited until like the first week of August. So the current live stream is going to be debuting like the 9th and the 10th of August. That was around the same time that they did the live stream last year to reveal Kaido and Luffy to us for the first time. And then it was 24 hours after the live stream was actually when they debuted. So there wasn't actually much time between the stream and the release of them in the game, so it was actually kind of exciting seeing them released for the first time. And obviously this debuted the motion artworks, which was obviously really cool, and still to this day is still one of the best legends in the game, definitely in the top 5 of most people's opinions. Both Luffy and Kaido have both massive upsides that works well in a lot of different pieces of content. So the fact that this One Piece Day celebration last year was a Super Sugo Fest, and this was the start of the Versus event, remember, where we had this debut, and then the next part of the celebration, which was Law and Blackbeard, and then the final part of the celebration was Shanks and Kid. So that was a pretty big release, honestly, and it all started at One Piece Day last year in 2024. Now we go into this year. So this year they give us a bit of information about One Piece Day. They talk about the fact that the live stream on day number 1, August 9th at 7 p.m. PST is when the stream or the information is going to be going live. And it does mention the URL and a little bit of an asterisk here mentioning that it's not going to be a Super Sugo Fest. And I think it's interesting that they do that. I think it's actually a good thing that they did do this, because I think it definitely puts people's expectations in check, because if they didn't mention this, I think a lot of people, myself included, would be expecting there to be a Super Sugo Fest for this One Piece Day celebration. And the fact that they are not doing that, I think that if we went in expecting it, it probably would have been a letdown, just saying, oh, it's just a regular, celebratory unit. So what we can kind of expect from this is that it's going to be something akin to Wano Law, these Straw Hat characters. We got Zoro and Sanji, the Reverie waifu characters. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be anything related to a Gear 5 Luffy or a Luffy versus Kaido being a Super Sugo Fest exclusive character. So we can expect it to be something a bit more low-key, probably something that is adjacent to Egghead in some way, shape, or form. Potentially could be another one of the Vegapunks. It could be... I hope it's not the case, but it could be another Bonnie. Really hope it's not. It could be relating to... I do think it's going to be like a quote-unquote good guy character, you know what I mean? I don't think it's going to be one of the 5 elders or anything like that. I'm not expecting that. I'm definitely thinking it's going to be a quote-unquote good guy, whether it be a Supernova, a Straw Hat in some way, shape, or form. I think that's probably a safe bet into guessing what it could be. If we even just look at like the current release schedule of Sugo Fest exclusives, it is still summertime, right? So they could potentially still go back to the Nami, Yamato, and Otama related stuff. Even this A-side, I'd almost kind of classify it as almost like a summertime character, considering the character. And then you had this random release of Crocodile and Nico Robin, but then you still have Garp and Figureland Garling pivoting back to the God Valley, release. So I don't expect them to go back to God Valley, because I don't really think there's much else for them to do at God Valley right now. Like, I don't expect it to be another Roger or anything like that. I don't expect it to be another 5 Elder. I just don't think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that they've covered pretty much everything right now, considering we had Newgate, Shiki, Linlin, Roger, Rayleigh, Gaban. Now you've got Garling and Garb. Like, those were the main characters that they revealed during the most recent anime episode, during Kuma's flashback. So I think that as it stands right now, I don't expect it to be anything relating to God Valley. So the way that I kind of see it is it's going to probably stay in the same vein of where we are right now in terms of the anime being an Egghead. So I think Egghead adjacent in some fashion is what I would expect heading into this celebration. But let me know your thoughts and opinions about this down below in the comment section. Of course, we're going to get the information in 4 days time, so hopefully we see something exciting. At the end of the day, the fact that it's not a Super Sugo Fest, it's just the fact that it allows you to conserve your rainbow gems for another banner in the future, which I think overall is a good thing. I would expect there to be a Super Sugo Fest probably in September. Also, you got to remember that during November 12th is when we have the half anniversary, so it's going to be the 11.5 anniversary starting in November. So potentially we might not get a Super Sugo Fest in September, because literally 1 month after we'll get an anniversary exclusive banner, and then the month after that we head into December, and then at New Year's, of course, we've got another big Super Sugo Fest at New Year's. So I don't really know when to expect the next Super Sugo Fest exclusive, but either way, this gives you a good opportunity to conserve those rainbow gems. So that's going to wrap it up for me. Thank you so much for watching the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and as I said, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions about who you think is going to be the One Piece Day celebratory character this year. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.